Cortisol impacts almost every organ and tissue in your body. It's also at the center of recent social media wellness videos, many of which blame the hormone for a long list of health issues if it's not in check. Well, this Wellness Wednesday, we're learning more about what an imbalance can mean for your mental and physical health. So joining me now is Dr. Natalie Gentile with Direct Care Physicians of Pittsburgh. And you always bring us so much insight around some of this hoopla that starts to surface on social. I sound so old saying hoopla. But you know, you start to see these things on social media and you're like, oh, I checked that box, this affects me, and you realize you don't really know what all of this is doing in your body.
Sure, a lot of the issues around hormonal health and the symptoms that people have are very non-specific symptoms.
Right.
Weight gain, hair loss, fatigue, skin changes. I mean, these could be due to a multitude of things.
A number of things. They could be due to your diet.
Absolutely.
And so what is cortisol? Why are we hearing so much about it?
Cortisol is a hormone that is secreted by the adrenal glands. They sit on top of our kidneys. And it involves an axis starting up in the brain, actually, that releases a cascade of hormones to tell the adrenal glands more cortisol or less cortisol. We often call cortisol the stress hormone, and it is a normal response when we're under stressors like an injury, recent surgery, or an illness for cortisol to go up during those times, just as a protective, evolutionary benefit of our bodies.
So if you have been diagnosed with or suffer from anxiety, is this something that is cortisol playing a role in that as well, or different functions?
So if you are having anxiety secondary to an actual issue like Cushing's syndrome or adrenal insufficiency, where there are true cortisol problems, that could be related, but just a psychosocial type of issue like depression or anxiety isn't necessarily going to raise your cortisol.
And I don't know if there's any information out there on this, but do women or men suffer from more of an imbalance of cortisol? I just feel like my husband plays it cool so much, like he can just, oh yeah, no, it's good, we'll handle it, no big deal. Where I'm like, oh, we have so much to do, Yeah, and I feel like that elevation.
Oh, certainly. I think that just speaks far more to the issue in our society of what women carry. Men and women, absolutely, we all have a lot on our backs, but right. Women, a very different way.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of implications of that on our mental health, our immune system, our physical health that may not actually be explained by just cortisol.
Right. Right. It's just one hormone in a whole body system that's making us tick. So what are signs of an imbalance of cortisol?
So if you have an issue with too much cortisol called Cushing's syndrome, some people can have what are called like purple stretch marks or striae that can grow on their skin. They can have a lump of fatty tissue in the back here. They can also have hair loss and high blood pressure. This is a very serious medical condition.
Right.
Other end of the spectrum with really low cortisol is what's called adrenal insufficiency. It can be an autoimmune disease, like Addison's disease, for example. And that's where people can get so if they get sick, they need to have steroids, AKA, something to supplement for the lack of cortisol. So these are true medical conditions that we need to intervene on.
And this condition that you just mentioned, if you're low with cortisol, is much different than what you may have heard about with adrenal fatigue, which is really just almost like a gimmicky term that's being thrown around.
I'm so glad you brought this up because adrenal fatigue is something that I'm commonly seeing so many people diagnosed with by non-physicians or people that are kind of in more of the alternative medicine world. And it's not actually a real diagnosis. So endocrinology societies do not recognize this as an actual diagnosis, and there are no randomized control trials that truly support adrenal fatigue as a diagnosis. But a lot of us have those nonspecific symptoms and want to feel better. So when someone gives us time and they listen to these symptoms and they say, hey, you have adrenal fatigue, here's all of these supplements you can take, of course we're going to want that answer.
Right.
We just want to feel better. We want an answer.
We just want to feel better.
Yes.
And I think that's why we're all so susceptible to hearing these things and thinking, oh, I can just take this and feel better? Sign me up.
Unfortunately, when I'm sitting in my office, am across from many people who have been in these settings where they've been diagnosed with kind of the same 5 issues, one of them being adrenal fatigue. They're all given the same protocol of supplements, And shocker, they don't really feel better.
Right.
And what's concerning with these supplements is they're unregulated, and we don't know what's in them. And in fact, they can make people sicker long term.
And cortisol is something that fluctuates throughout the day in all of us, right? I mean, as we have the stress, as we're even just getting up, we might get that burst of cortisol that comes through, right?
Yes, so we all have natural fluctuations of cortisol throughout the day. Typically, if someone's going to check your blood or serum cortisol, it's going to be early in the morning around 8 a.m. But endocrinologists and PCPs, we're doing testing that might be, a midnight salivary cortisol, an 8 a.m. cortisol. These are very specific times that we're checking it based on those normal rhythms of cortisol.
And you mentioned supplements that some might throw out for various things. Is there anything that you can do if you feel like maybe your cortisol is all over the place or you have received that diagnosis?
Sure. So if we're going back to some lifestyle basics, moving, regular activity, sleeping, that is huge for cortisol, right? So getting proper quality sleep, and if you're not, figuring out why. Some of these stress type of supplements like ashwagandha, for example, magnesium, love it. So, and we did an episode on magnesium, talking about some of these back to basic things, plus our hydration, focusing on our mental health, and then how we are eating. So if we can get in more colorful fruits, vegetables, our whole grains, our legumes, these phytochemicals, love it. That can be very helpful.
I have to tell you, our conversation about magnesium changed my life. I've now started taking it and adding it to my daily vitamin mix, and so I'm so glad to be taking it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So good to see you as always. And if you're interested in learning more about Direct Care Physicians of Pittsburgh or Rebel Wellness, you can head to our website. We'll have it posted for you there. What do you get for somebody that has it all? An upcoming market may be the solution with unique gifts from hundreds of vendors. We're learning more about what to expect at this massive event coming up after the break.